This is Jed Disler, and welcome to the Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. This is a bonus episode. Usually we have episodes twice a week, but I'm sneaking this one in between our usual Monday and Thursday episodes because I just thought it would be a fun thing to do, and because I am in Warsaw now, and I happen to have seen Bruce Liu play the Saint-Saëns Fifth Concerto for the opening concert, I thought it might be fun to talk about his recent recording of Tchaikovsky's Seasons and compare it alongside an even newer recording that just came out by Yunchan Lim. But before I talk about the Seasons and these recordings, I'd like you to consider subscribing to the Piano Maven, taking out a paid subscription by clicking on the link in our episode description. And paid subscribers get a free download each month, and you also will get advance notices about upcoming episodes and other goodies. Your support always helps to keep this podcast going, and I know you want it to keep it going rather than for it to stop. Certainly that's how I feel. In 1875, the St. Petersburg music magazine Nouvelliste commissioned Tchaikovsky to contribute 12 piano pieces, one for each month of the year. And although the composer evidently tossed off these pieces with almost no effort, the music's melodic charm and its emotional directness hold a lot of appeal for audiences, and the increasing number of pianists who've committed the complete cycle of the 12 pieces known as the Seasons to disc, I think, is particularly telling in its popularity. So, as I mentioned before, two of the most visible competition gold medalists of recent years both released recordings of the Seasons in fairly close proximity. You have one on Deutsche Grammophon by Bruce Liu, who was the 2021 Warsaw competition gold medalist, and his version came out in late 2024 on Deutsche Grammophon. And more recently, the 2022 Van Cliburn gold medalist, Yunchan Lim, recorded the Seasons for Decca. Now, before I went about recording this episode, I saw that my good buddy David Hurwitz reviewed the Yunchan Lim Seasons on his YouTube channel, and he thought the interpretations were fussy and mannered. And although I understand why he came to this conclusion, I personally find that Yunchan Lim's admittedly affettuoso gestures have genuine musicality. I think it comes from a genuine place, and I'm much more convinced of his interpretations than Dave was. So I guess my friend David Hurwitz and I will have to agree to disagree about this recording. And, you know, it's the same case with my long-held reference version of the Seasons featuring Mikhail Pletnev, the one on Virgin Classics. Now, is Pletnev being affected, or is he simply being imaginative? I guess there is a thin line between imagination and affectation. But in any case, I thought it could be interesting to compare the Bruce Liu and Yunchan Lim recordings of the Seasons back to back and see what we find. First of all, the engineering is very different for each disc. The Bruce Liu recording is closely mic'd, and it makes an intimate impact, whereas the Yunchan Lim Seasons was recorded at more of a concert hall distance. And generally, Bruce Liu is the introvert, interpretively speaking, while Yunchan Lim is the extrovert. And this is very obvious in the opening piece, January. Timings, you know, can always be deceptive, but Yunchan Lim takes 5 minutes and 19 seconds to Bruce Liu's 6 minutes and 38 seconds. Bruce is very ruminative, while Yunchan is straightforward. And also, Yunchan Lim takes Tchaikovsky's legato and détaché markings much more literally than Bruce Liu does. Both interpretations of February, the carnival, are brisk and upbeat, but I think that Yunchan Lim has a lighter touch, and sometimes he accelerates the phrases to convey more nervous energy, and I think that's very convincing. Perhaps because of the close microphone perspective, the imitative treble and bass melody lines in the Song of the Lark, representing the month of March, seem a tad exaggerated in the Bruce Liu recording, although some listeners may find that the textures are really quite three-dimensional in a much more impressive way than I feel. But a similar effect seems less forced with Yunchan Lim, but this may have to do with the engineering. And this is a case where I feel like the engineering sort of influences how you perceive the performances. Both of these pianists take Snowdrop, which is the piece representing April, at a rather crisp tempo, and they make similar rubatos, although I think perhaps the rubatos are more pronounced with Bruce Liu. Bruce takes a little bit more time in the piece May, White Nights, and I think his reading is very eloquent, although Yunchan's slightly faster tempo and almost guitar-like way in how he arpeggiates the accompaniment benefits from a little bit more freedom. I would say that in this piece that Yunchan is the bardic folk singer in contrast to Bruce's leader recital, if you know what I mean. And you can say the same when comparing both pianists in the famous barcarolle that represents the month of June. I find it really hard to choose between these two performances. I like them both. The month of July is represented by the Song of the Reaper. I mean somebody who's reaping a harvest. I don't mean the Grim Reaper. And although Yunchan Lim has the right kind of thrusting character in this piece, there is something to be said about Bruce Liu's heavier deliberation and stronger accents. Maybe it's too monumental an interpretation for such a small piece, but I think it's interesting. But for all of Bruce Liu's sophisticated voicing and melody/accompaniment separation in August, the Harvest, I do here prefer Yunchan Lim's faster tempo and his suppler and more nimble execution overall. Now, when it comes to September, the Hunt, to be honest, I really don't care for either of these pianists' interpretation because neither of them truly lock in rhythmically, nor do they make the clearest distinctions possible between triplet and duplet phrases. You don't get that rock-solid steadiness and swing that you hear from pianists like Vasily Primakov or Earl Wild in this piece. And I think that both pianists could move a bit more and not milk that piece Autumn, representing October, so much. I think that they kind of moon over it too much. Although Tchaikovsky did get away with milking the sucker dry, but he could do it, and these younger pianists couldn't. So that's that. On the other hand, too many pianists swoon over the opening of Troika, which is November, and both Yunchan Lim and Bruce Liu are much more rhythmic in this case, and they understand the music's dance origins. Again, Yunchan has the lighter touch, and Bruce maybe is a little too earnest. He's kind of like a great dance student next to Yunchan Lim's experienced Fred Astaire or Gene Kelly, if you get my drift. Now, for the last piece, representing the month of December, Bruce Liu's little hesitations and tenutos and other expressive gestures seem too self-aware, to my ears at least. But I find that Yunchan's expressive gestures have much more natural ebb and flow. Although I do have to say that neither pianist gets that organic push and pull and balletic underpinning that Mikhail Pletnov brings to this piece. And that's still my favorite interpretation of December of pretty much anybody who's recorded it. So, between Bruce Liu and Yunchan Lim in The Seasons, I probably would go for Yunchan Lim, although I still like the force of personality and, again, the balletic sensibility that distinguishes Mikhail Pletnov's recording for Virgin Classics, which is now Warner Classics, and it appears in that recently released box set of Mikhail Pletnov's complete Warner recordings. I haven't gotten that box yet. I'm actually in Warsaw now, so I'm not yet home, and I haven't seen my mail, and I'm just wondering how many box sets have turned up in my mailroom. So I still maintain that Mikhail Pletnov's Seasons is my reference version, but there are other cycles that really do come close. I love Earl Wild's. I love the one by Vasily Primakov. Vladimir Ashkenazy has a very nice version of The Seasons. And there's a very idiomatic and heartfelt interpretation by Mikhail Voskresensky. This one is hard to find, but it's well worth the hunt. It's on the Japanese Triton label. If you ever come across this disc, pick it up without hesitation. So that's my comparison of Tchaikovsky's Seasons with Bruce Liu and Yunchan Lim. This is Jed Disler, and you've been listening to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings, and I look forward to being with you for our next episode.